So let's take a look on how to convert an exterior lit scene to an underwater scene. If we go to File, Open, I'm going to jump down to 15 underwater start. And then I'm just going to jump into my project settings and set them really quick. And then we can take a look at see what we got. So we have this exterior scene. So we got our teapot sitting in with some rocks. We have our dust particles pass, and if I gain this up, we can see this a little better. This is just a dust particle pass coming from Houdini. We have this bubbles pass that we're going to take a look at how to integrate. This is also coming from Houdini. And then we have this caustics texture. So let's start with our mapping our caustics actually onto our geometry. So how do we do that? First, let's just get the caustics ready to go. So let's add some color variation to this and also add some tiling to this. So to get some more resolution, I'm going to drop in a reformat. And what we're going to do is, instead of doing 2 format, we're going to drop in a scale. So we'll scale this up by 2. So we're getting some more resolution there. I'm going to drop in a tile node. And we're going to tile this up just like that. So we get a lot more patterns going on. So we want to kind of add some color variation in here, right? So we can do that by adding some chromatic aberration. And the way we do that is if I drop in a blur node, and if I go to all channels and set this to RGBA, and if we just affect the green channel, and if we blur this, we notice we're getting some color variations going. I'm just going to do a subtle amount like 1.5. And then what we can do is just shift that one channel over. So if I drop in a shuffle copy and a transform node, I hook those up just like this. And if I just shuffle over the green channel, and if I set my transform something like that, and we check out what's happening here, essentially what we're doing is we're transforming that one channel up just like that, and that's giving us some color variation. The next step, what we can do is we can add some distortion to a specific channel. So the way we do that is if I drop in a noise, and if I play with the size, something like 135. And the way the distortion node works in Nuke, the iDistort, is it's expecting values from a -1 to a 1 range. So right now our noise pattern is currently just from 0 to 1. So what we want to do is drop in a gray node, unclap the blocks, and remap this to something like 0.5 and then 1. So now we have values going from a -1 to a +1. And then I'm going to just drop in a shuffle node, just like that. And we're going to shuffle in a new channel. So we'll go to new channel, and then we'll do underscore noise. And then we'll set the RGB preset, hit OK, and then we'll select our RGB channels over here. And then if I hook up the iDistort, and we select our noise, or UV channels for noise, you can see we're starting to get some warping happening, just like that. And if I just set the scale up to something like 4.2, what we can do is if I drop in another shuffle copy, and if I just shuffle in one of those channels, so we'll just do something like blue, we can see we're adding some more chromatic aberration, just like that. And the last thing I want to do here is just add in a blur node, just like that, by hitting B, and then I just want to crank up the size on this a little bit, just to soften this out, just so it's not so sharp. So now how do we map this onto our image? So we've used the UV map with the ST map to map on based off the UV coordinates, but now we actually want to do a projection from top down essentially. And the way we can do that is if we actually use the point position pass to generate UV coordinates, we can actually get a top down projection. So let's take a look at how to do that. So I'm going to grab our render. I'm going to shuffle out the point position pass. So point position world, just like that. And then instead of grabbing all the channels, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the red, and then we're going to shuffle green into the green channel, and then we're going to shut off the other two channels. Essentially what that's doing is it's making this coming from X and Z, so therefore it's going to be top down. And if I drop in an ST map along with a checkerboard and make sure we get the channels coming right, we select our UV channels with RGB, we notice we're getting some mapping going. So if I drop in a gray node on our point position, we can start playing with these values. So if I go up on the white, you notice we're remapping those values onto our objects. So right now we're getting a top-down projection. And if I set this something like 35, so it goes all the way out, and then we want to make sure that we're getting the rest of the image covered, so I'll do something like -4. We can now take our source and map that on with our caustics. So now our caustics are being mapped onto our scene. Cool. So now that we got our caustics mapped on, we want to kind of treat this as a raw lighting pass, right? So right now this looks very gamey. We're not getting a lot of shadowing going on. So what we can do is actually use ambient occlusion like we have been doing with our relights. So if we come down here, we're noticing that we're losing our channels. If we look at our AO pass, we're not getting anything. It's because they all get destructed by this ST map. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually copy them all over. So if I drop in a copy node, and if we drop in a dot and link these up, just like that, what we're going to do is we're going to disable the channel copy. So we're not going to do the individual channels. What we're going to do is copy all the layers, which is what these are considered in Nuke. So we're going to do layer copy and then set this to RGBA. So that's going to map in our caustics, but we're going to keep all the original red elements that we're creating. So we're essentially just keeping this RGB element and then utilizing the rest of our passes, which is all this. Cool. So let's start adding some shadows. So I will drop in a shuffle node. Drop it in an AO. Then what we're going to do is multiply that over, just like this. So merge, and then multiply, just like that. And if I drop in a grade node over our AO, we can slam the gamma down, just like that, just to get more crunchy shadows in there. And I'm going to go all the way down to something like 0.2. And I'm going to multiply up a little bit to adjust our exposure, maybe something like 1.1. And then since we're treating this as a raw lighting pass, we're going to want to shuffle out our diffuse textures now and multiply those in. So shuffle, and then shuffle out our diffuse. So we'll get our diffuse textures, and then we'll drop in a merge by hitting M, and then merge that in with a multiply operation, just like that. And then it's still turning out pretty dark, so what I'm going to do is drop in a grade node, and then adjust the multiplication to adjust exposure, like that. And then we'll do something like 16. So now we got our caustics. Now we want to start doing some relighting to our image. So I'm going to copy our original EXR and just bring it back down here, just to give us some more room to work with. And then I'm going to bring in our relighting template. So insert comp nodes, presets, and then we have our relight point cloud, which is what we built before. And the only thing that we need to do to replace in this setup is our camera. So I'm going to jump on our camera, go to File, Read from File, and then navigate to our project root, Maya Miscellaneous, and then we're going to take the underwater version 1 FBX. And then we'll replace that data. And if I hook that up, we should be getting everything set up already. So if we start playing around with this light position, we'll start to get some relighting. And if I view our point cloud, I can position this in place. So I'm just going to position this light so it's coming towards the back. So I'm going to do 23, 10, and 8, just to put it in the back like that. If we view the point cloud again, we'll see that's coming from behind our teapot. And if we check out what we're getting in our relight node, we'll see that we're getting some relighting. But now we need to add in some shadows, right? So we'll use that same technique that we did up here. We'll just drop in a shuffle. I will shuffle out the occlusion, just like that. I will multiply that in. And then all we need to do is drop in a grade node, and then we can get some more crunchy shadows in here. So I'm just going to slam the gamma down, something like this. Something like 0.3. So we have our raw lighting. Now we need to generate a GI pass to soften up these shadows. So I'm going to shuffle out the ambient occlusion again, just like that. And then this time I'm going to merge it in with a plus operation right there. And now if I take a look at where we're getting those two, our lighting and AO combined, which is our GI. And if I come into our AO and then just drop the gamma down to crunch it, something like 0.2, what we can do is come into our merge and then dial this down so we just get a little bit of ambient lighting happening, maybe something like 0.18. And then we just need to add in our diffuse textures again, so I'm going to drop in a shuffle node. Shuffle out diffuse, just like that, and then drop in a merge, and then multiply that in, just like that. And then to combine this with our main tree, all we got to do is merge it in with a plus. So drop in a merge, connect that with our main tree, and then do a plus operation. And then we'll just bring this down to clean this up a little bit. So now we can take our original render elements for our reflection and our specular and add those in just to get a little bit of spec information in here. So if I shuffle out our reflection, and if I merge that in with an plus operation, just like that, and then shuffle out our spec render element, specular right there, and then we'll just copy and paste that add operation and merge that in. And then you can see we're kind of getting this halo effect with our reflections. Our scene is no longer nearly as bright as it once was, so the reflection that's coming from the original render isn't going to work straight out of the box. So what we can do is the same technique that we're using with our AO. We'll shuffle it out and then we'll multiply that in just to create some more contact shadows right there. So we'll shuffle out the AO, we'll merge that in, just like that, and then we'll really crunch the AO to get some more shadows in there, something like 0.4545, just like that. And then if we look at what we're getting, it's a much more believable result. Cool, so that's the basics of rebuilding our RGB beauty element. Now what we want to do is actually start adding in some dust and debris. So in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at how to do that.